Okay. Hi, Ted. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Sophia.
You look cozy.
I'm on my bed.
It's freezing in my office. I realize I can't.
Well, we have chaos downstairs. Like the grandparents came in and like they brought all the Christmas presents for the kids, and they opened them up. So like downstairs is just
It's like
madness.
the
You know?
holidays vomited downstairs.
Right. Like they're making cookies, and there's it's just it's a mess.
Fun. So this is your moment of calm.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I wanted to hear about your home birth experience, but I kind of wanted to start back because, your home birth wasn't your first birth that you experienced. So I just wanted to kind of like do a little quick recap on your daughter's births and what those were like for you before we actually get into the birth of your son. Were there anything that popped into your mind in like during the pregnancies or the birth experiences or postpartum that just like really stuck with you that you want to like talk about? I know we met during towards the end of pregnancy with your first baby.
hmm Yeah, I would tell you, all three of them were obviously different experiences, but I think that like the common thread between all three of them maybe is that I think without like hospital intervention, all three of them would have been really fast. Because like things were accelerating similar to the last one where we had the home birth before we got to the hospital, and then we had an epidural, and then things just like, slowed way down. They were still probably relatively quick on the birth, time scale because they weren't, like a day or two or,
Right.
15 hours or anything like that. Um, but that's kind of what I noticed the difference between like having the home birth versus having births in the hospital,
Hmm.
especially. All three of them were relatively low complication type, births, so there wasn't any dramatics really
Hmm.
to speak of. But yeah, I mean, that was probably what I would say.
Hmm. Was there anything like from the first experience that you either would like what you left there saying you wished it would be like that again for any future births, or like you really wanted to avoid?
Are you referring to the hospitals or the home birth?
Like Layla's birth. Yeah. Like anything
Um,
that stood out for you there that was like really awesome, or you were like, "Ooh, could have done without that."
yeah, I didn't. What I really didn't like is after Layla was born, it was like, let's run a whole bunch of tests now, and we got to take your baby and go do this test and this test and this test, and like, it's just constant interruption, and like, you're just kind of trying to figure it out as you go as your first baby, and I don't know, just a lot of it seemed unnecessary and like just, so someone can cross a box off on their form at the hospital, which is, like I just don't really kind of appreciate those kind of things.
Mhm. Mhm. What about your second daughter's birth? What did you feel like that was, kind of like a repeat in terms of that
Yeah, I mean,
boxes off?
their two births were pretty similar. And just I don't know, just being in the hospital is just, yeah, I don't know. It's just I never feel great when I'm in a hospital just because it's just I don't know. Just there's a million people running around, and there's beeping, and there's machines, and you're hooked up, and it's not comfortable. It's just
Yeah. Well,
no
besides
idea.
childbirth, you only go there if something's wrong. So it has
Right,
this like
exactly.
connotation of like, okay, that does that mean something's gonna go wrong? Like, are we prepared
Right,
for that? Well, tell me
right,
a little
yeah.
bit about, because with your son, you were preparing for a hospital birth. Do you want to tell me a little bit about like how the transition from like planning a hospital birth to deciding to stay home unfolded for you?
Um, well, COVID definitely like changed the game right? Because then you were only allowed to have like one person in the hospital with you, and then we just kept doing more research on it. I had talked to a couple friends that I play golf with, and they had home births and had great experiences. And that kind of, like, just someone else I knew, like, saying, like, oh, hey, we did this and it was awesome. Like, really was, for me, was really reassuring.
Normalizes it.
Right. And, like, I guess, I don't know. Like, the whole time, like, when it's first brought up, you're just like, well, what if something goes wrong? And then we're at our house, and then that's not good, right? But then you just automatically think of the negative, but you don't think of, like, all the positives. Like, you're at your house. Like, you're not in a stupid hospital with a million people running around. Like, after the baby's born, you can lay in your own bed. You can go downstairs and make a sandwich. Like, it's just such a more, like, relaxed, comfortable, like, sets you more at ease kind of feeling being at your home.
Did you go down and make a sandwich? I'm trying to remember.
I definitely got some kind of food. Well, after the labor started, there wasn't much time to even warm up a burrito, I don't think.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, I was like, if anything, you guys kind of just went to bed.
Yeah, it was kind of late, yeah.
Because I know I was with you guys for your first, I was your doula, and then we were kind of, Ashley and I were pregnant at the same time for the second.
Right.
And planned on being your doula for the first, and then just coincidentally also have my midwifery license, so that switch felt pretty seamless for me, at least. How was prenatal care? I mean, I don't know if you, with the girls' pregnancies, were you ever a part of the prenatal care? I know with COVID you weren't ever going to be able to be a part of the care.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't allowing me to go, so I missed all that kind of stuff. Which is a bummer. I mean, with all the girls, I went to all the appointments, Yeah. My schedule is flexible enough to where I can kind of just do as I want. So, I was a big part of the prenatal stuff with the girls, but with Miller, you can't go to the hospital, you can't go do the sonograms, you can't do any of that stuff. So that was kind of a bummer, but yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that they don't consider partners essential. Like, right. Only essential people. Like, okay, how much more essential do you get? Like, other than the mother.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we did all of the prenatal care once you guys switched over at your house. And is there anything about that stood out to you, like having the girls be involved, or being able to stay in your jammies, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was nice that the girls were there. Again, it's like also a convenience factor, right? Like, if you're looking at it, like, you don't have to drive to the hospital and check in and sit in the waiting room for 15 minutes and then wait to see the doctor and then blah, 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 right? It's like you showed up and it was easy, and, have a glass of wine or whatever and just do your exam. And, like, it was just, I mean, that in itself is kind of, like, worth it. You know what I mean? Just, like, as a time-saving, thing.
I always tell people that about specifically postpartum, because then you don't have to bring the baby out, it's like.
Right. Into a hospital where everyone's sick, you know what I mean? Just, like, it's actually less risk factor there, right? Yeah. And prenatal, too. Well, yeah, because you're not going to the hospital as much. It's got to be better.
Yeah. What about, like, did certain things ever pop into your mind? Usually, like, the top 3 things for partners that they consider is safety of home birth, price of home birth, and cleanup. Like, does that mean I have to clean up this mess? Were any of those 3 things, like, a factor for you? And, like, how did you work through them?
Well, with our insurance, the price was going to be, like, almost the same. So, like, it was basically a wash, essentially, price-wise. So that didn't really factor. Yeah, I mean, you do think about the cleanup in that aspect because it's at your house. Like, I was kind of nervous about, like, the birthing tub. you know, because if the birthing tub breaks and then you have a huge water problem, that could be a real big problem. But the tub it's way more sturdy and way more thick, and like there's an extra, you know, cover on top of that even. It's like knowing what I know now about it, like I wouldn't be worried about it, you know.
That is a good point, though, because that is a factor for a lot of partners. A lot of times, too, they're concerned about if it's going to be upstairs, like the weight of it, you know?
Right.
Too. And honestly, all the births I've done, we've done like 4th-story apartments and all sorts of things. And the weight of the tub, and in terms of like splash, I mean, your tub didn't get filled very high, but the ones that get filled, like there's not a lot of splashing. It's more like her getting in and out of the tub where there could be like or something. But and I've only had a tub pop once. It was the top ring, and it was because they accidentally filled it with like 120-degree water. And so we just had the top liner, and it was just kind of like slowly deflating. And so we bailed, realized what happened, got a new tub. Luckily she labored long enough, and that wasn't an issue. But yeah, so as long as you don't fill it with scalding hot water, it's usually good.
Yeah, I you know, we filled it right out of our shower and it was fine. And I mean, I didn't think it was a big deal at all. I mean, knowing what I know about physics, like the weight isn't a problem because it's dispersed over such a big area, right? So it's, and then the cleanup I thought would be way worse too, but it wasn't really a problem, you know?
Especially when you give birth in the tub, because it is all contained within the tub, you know?
Right, that does help. Yes.
Yeah, but even land births, we've got the Chuck's pads, and we just try to keep things tidy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool. Well, take me to like the moment you guys realized she was in labor, and kind of walk me through what that experience of your son's birth was like.
So we had a roller coaster. So, I mean, Ashley kind of was having contractions, like starting slightly, like when you were here earlier in the day. What was that, like around 3 or so?
I think I was there like 4 to 6 or something.
Yeah, 4 to 6. Yeah, because you weren't gone very long.
As I was leaving, she's like, "Here it goes again. Probably won't call you," because she had done that for a couple nights, right?
Right. Yeah, she had kind of had a couple false labors the previous days. And so she was kind of half expecting the same thing, you know, like, oh, these will probably just go away. Because before she would get in the shower, and then she got a shower, and then she wouldn't be having contractions. The opposite happened this time. So she got in the shower, and then it was go time. So I think I called you, and she was like still in the shower, like just getting out of the shower. And that was at 7:45. I don't remember the time now.
I think that was it, because I got there roughly an hour later. Yeah.
Yeah, I called you at like 7:45, and then she got out of the shower. She was having like serious contractions. Started getting like, you know, she was like bouncing on the ball a little bit. I was rubbing her back, doing some light touch massage, and and then it went from that to "don't touch me" to like "get me in the tub" to having a baby out in 10 minutes. Like, it went really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you got here and the baby was born like 10 minutes later or something crazy, right?
Yeah. I came in with my like "baby's falling out right now" bag, and I was like, okay, still in. I'm going to grab the rest of my stuff. And then I came in and she got in the tub.
Yeah. And the baby just, I mean, literally just shot out. Like, if you blinked, you missed the whole thing. So that was the craziest thing. And yeah, I mean, it was just so fast that, like, you know, like the whole experience was just, I mean, we barely had enough time to barely fill up the tub and get it inflated and all that stuff before the baby was here. So
I know I always joke that she like barely had a water birth. There was just enough water for her to get her bottom out.
Right.
It wasn't
And
very full.
also in hindsight, like had we tried to go to the hospital, I mean, there's a good chance that kid gets born in the parking lot. You know what I mean? By the time we get there, or no, I mean, it would have been ugly. It wouldn't have not been great. So in that respect, I'm glad that we did a home birth too, because even if you do have a super fast birth, you're not going to be stuck in the parking lot or in the car or, halfway to the doctor or whatever. You know that you're, set up and you can do it here. So that also takes like a layer of pressure off. Cause I mean, as the dad is like the guy who's going to be driving to the hospital every time, like, that's like a layer of stress that you don't have to worry about, which is nice. Because a lot of times, I can just guarantee like new dads that they're pulling that trigger way quicker than they need to most of the time. And then, or way late, you know what I mean? It's like,
I'm actually kind of remembering with Layla's, did you guys go to the hospital and get sent home? And so that's when you were like, maybe we need a doula. I'm kind of like vaguely remembering that story. You're like, we don't want to do that again.
Yeah, she had a false labor like a couple weeks prior. Mm-hmm. She just had, she had contractions and then they weren't going away. And so we called the advice nurse and they were like, okay, come on in and we'll just check you out, and they were like, okay, you're not in labor, go home.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of remembering.
I think they kind of went away when we got to the hospital too. So like,
She's like, I'd rather have somebody to call to tell me like, you can just stay home.
Right. So yeah, that's kind of what happened with Layla. But yeah, I mean, not having to drive to the hospital and figure that whole scenario out and getting in the car, you're, being in labor is a nice bonus as well. I would say for having a home birth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about like anything in the like immediate like postpartum, like still day of his birth, but like newborn exam or like your daughter's being there or just anything that has to do with the placenta or anything that stood out to you that feels important to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that the contrast between the postpartum at home versus the postpartum in a hospital is like two different planets. You know what I mean? It's like as soon as you have the baby in the hospital, 5 people coming in to talk to you, examining the baby. Oh, let's take him for a hearing test and this test, and let's test him for whatever. And you just, as the partner that's not in the bed, like you're just stuck on some uncomfortable couch or something, and like your wife's not really that comfortable because she's hooked up to a bunch of machines, and like it's just not, it's just terrible. It's not terrible, but it's just comparatively to what I know now as far as home births go, it's like just being able to lie in your own bed and just be relaxed and have your family there and whoever's staying with you, and just like being able to eat regular food that's not hospital food, and like just all that, just not, I wouldn't say pressure, but just like stress of like, I got to do this and this and this at the hospital. Like, it's just so much better. It's so much better.
I know I compare it a lot of times to like, if you've only ever seen in black and white, you don't really know that color is so much better,
Right.
But if that's all you've ever known, then it's like the happiest day of your life because you're baby, so it feels good enough, right. But like until you experience what it can be, like all the extra little things just add to the relaxation of it all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's well said. It's just, it's like, it's like the happiest day of your life, but when you're in the hospital, because you're in a hospital, you're still, there's that layer of stress that like you don't, you realize it's there, but it's not, maybe you're not thinking about it as much, but like when you're at home and it's gone, that layer of stress, it's just really noticeable that you're like, oh, I can just sleep in my bed and like relax and just be with my wife and my baby like right here, and I don't have to answer 47 doctor questions and like do all this, all this BS.
Mm-hmm.
It's just from that respect, it's not even. I would never want to have a hospital birth again. You know what I mean? I just like given the option, I'm like kind of bummed that I didn't have Addie in the hospital. I think having the first one in the hospital just to see how the first one goes is probably not a terrible idea because who knows, whatever. Because my sister, her first baby, like she had crazy complications, and so something like that.
Well, and just because it's your second baby does not mean that it's going to be complication free. Just because the first was. There's no real way to anticipate those things.
Yeah, that's true.
I just don't want people to think like, oh, if one is complication free, then you're like,
right.
Yeah,
because my sister just had her second baby and she didn't have any complications.
I was gonna say, and if something has complications, it doesn't mean it's gonna happen again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
sometimes if I listen to birth stories, sometimes I can hear things where it's almost like because of the type of care that was received, complications were caused.
Yeah.
And they come in and save the day, which leaves people, to potentially feel like, oh, thank God I was here, because if I hadn't been, when maybe if they hadn't been there, it wouldn't have even happened in the first place. I feel I postpartum hemorrhage. I think we had kind of talked about this.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with what you just said, is that hospitals being a business and they have to turn these things out, like, right? So like their interest is to get this baby out and get you on your way, whereas that might not be the best thing for your wife and the baby, right? So I think having a home birth is probably way better in that respect, that you can just like, you probably, do they have statistics on home birth on first babies? Or like, are they the same as like second and third babies being less complicated as well?
Yeah, you're more likely to transfer, and transfer doesn't necessarily mean that it was an emergency. Most transfers are non-emergent. They're either for like pain medication because the mom's exhausted, or there's some like funky heart tones, and so they want to have an ability to monitor, more continuously, things like that. Yeah, so going to the hospital, I think because labors are usually longer for first-time moms, that they have a higher chance of ending up needing transporting.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's just a more natural process at your home. You know what I mean? There's no rush.
It's kind of just about like getting out of the way so that it can unfold, because the body knows what it's doing. I feel like a lot of times the more we do, the more we kind of mess it up, and it has to like overcome, or succumb, whatever happens. But yeah, just learning how to like sit on your hands and just remind everyone like, this is normal.
Right.
It's absolutely crazy and normal.
Yeah, this has been happening for like tens of thousands of years.
Right, we've survived as a species too well, almost.
Right.
What about your like long-term postpartum? I know you're kind of still in it, but anything that to speak of there? Has it been pretty smooth and straightforward? Have you guys had any little bumps along the way?
Yeah, everything's been good. Miller kind of had a little thing going on where he wasn't gaining weight for the first couple months, really. A little bit of weight, but he was like really kind of down on the chart. But we figured that out talking with you and just like trying a couple things. And now he's a big old chunker now. So he's back up to like 80-something%, I think, now. So, yeah, I mean, his postpartum care has been great. Haven't really had any problems to speak of.
What did you guys do to support him in gaining weight better?
I think we kind of figured out he wasn't getting kind of like the last couple ounces every feeding. So it was just a more of a forced effort on on the feeding. And then I think we supplemented a little bit with a bottle, and then also added an additional night feeding. And I think he put 5 pounds on last month,
Awesome.
which is ridiculous. So, yeah, that worked.
And
It
did
worked.
he end up having a tongue tie revision?
That's right. He had a lip tie, and we did some cranial. He had some cranial sacral work done too.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know what did what, but he's
Something
getting big.
worked.
Yeah, something worked.
Cool. Cool. Awesome. Well, is there kind of like a final closure, like if there is any partners listening to this who are like feeling hesitant about home
Right.
birth, or just like on the fence, that you maybe wish somebody had said to you a little earlier on, or just any advice you have?
Yeah, my advice would be to seriously consider home birth, because I think it's just a more natural, relaxed, just birthing process, which I think translates to like a safer, calmer, more like just birth for mother and new child. Like, and on top of that, like the convenience and the relaxation that you'll feel at your home is well worth it. Like, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Having 2 girls at a hospital and then having my third at home. I wish I would have had more of my kids at home. Knowing what I know now, I think it was a great experience, and I mean, I would definitely tell someone, if you're considering a hospital or a home birth, to go with home birth.
It was really sweet when we finally realized we were going to work together for home birth, because it did feel kind of like full circle in terms of like, I got to support you with your first as a doula,
Right.
and now I get to support you with home birth. Yeah, it was really sweet. And getting to like be with the girls and see them a bunch is like,
Right.
because it had been a while. Yeah.
Right. And I would say, I mean, having you there, for our first, and then for this one, was like an extra layer of like comfort and support as well. You're super knowledgeable, so that like also puts me at ease anyways. But yeah, I would recommend a home birth with Sophia for sure.
Sweet. Cool. Well, thank you again for
Yep.
taking time from your chaos to
Yeah.
sit in a calm environment.
Yeah, this was actually a
Bedroom
nice
your
little
son
bit.
was born in.
Right, exactly. Right over there.
Right there. Yeah. I
Yep.
remember I walked in and Asher was laying down. I was like, do you want to be lying down? Because it's usually like the most painful position. She's like, I don't want to move. I was like, get up. She was like, oh, okay, that's better. Well, it was good to see you, and I'll be seeing you again. We're not done with postpartum care.
Okay.
But thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, no problem.